we are trying to see what is the best way for going the path of security.
Okay.
Okay. First, I want to share that this conversation is recorded because this will be published in so many Facebook groups, in so many Arabic forums, in so many university forums, all of these things.
Yes, well, I'm recording right now, so I may stop and restart, or just to make it easy, so we can start at the right moment, and make a nice clean recording.
Okay, okay. Give me just 1 second. Wait a second only.
Sure. Hello, Mohammed.
Okay. First of all, can you give me a brief CV, a brief about your personal information, like your name, your position, everything like these things?
Sure, I can try. So I've been doing information security for about 25 years. I was initially working in industrial control systems at General Electric, and had invented one of the early firewalls, a product called the Borderware Firewall Server. Since then, I've been involved in both the information technology side of things and the critical infrastructure or industrial control system side of things at a variety of venues. I worked in trusted information systems, and until they were acquired by McAfee, I ran the firewall product lines at Cisco Systems in the late 90s, early 2000s. Following that, I started a company to make a security information and event management product, a SIM, and sold that back to Cisco with some of my SIM colleagues, which was the Cisco Mars product. I had started a company called Lofty Perch in 2005 to look at critical infrastructure cybersecurity issues, and had developed a view of the necessity to create shared situational awareness. So from facilities in power and transportation and so forth, through the regional, national, international levels, there was a need to develop a system where we could be aware of what we had, what it was doing, who we are, what our capabilities are. So in 2010, I joined a company called Alien Vault that had an open source SIM product that I've always liked, and had engaged again with the critical infrastructure market. 2011 and 12, started some consultancy company, ICS Cybersecurity, and a nonprofit knowledge sharing center called the Industrial Control System Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So currently I chair the ICS ISAC. I'm CEO of ICS Cybersecurity, and I work with private sector and public sector entities in the U.S. and internationally to develop systems to secure critical infrastructure and create situational awareness at facilities and share that awareness at higher levels to protect cultures and societies.
Okay, thank you. Then, if I am asked you, tell us about your educational career and how you started your educational path, and from the first point that you are so much interested in information security, what is the first steps that led you so much interested in that field?
Sure. Well, I think my path, first going back quite that far, there really weren't security classes to be taken, and my own path was a little bit unusual. However, I think the point really for students who are looking to develop their careers is a sincere curiosity in how systems work and how things work. Certainly there are jobs and there are roles that can be filled simply by being diligent, by learning steps very well. So you can learn how to do a penetration test. You can learn how to review code and so forth. But at the end of the day, security is a nebulous entity. It's a competition between yourself and and others. And the others will always take every possible means. So at the core of learning to do security is having an honest interest in all aspects of how these systems work, and constantly being able to challenge yourself and your own beliefs and your own ideas, to look at things differently. So in my case, I did not finish high school. I ended up working in a factory for a number of years. Felt that I wanted to do more, so I left and took classes at a community college in South Carolina in the United States, and really didn't study computers very much, but I studied everything, from the history of art to English to mathematics and so on and so forth.
So you are so means you join one college and you didn't complete that college, didn't complete your degree?
No, in fact, I continued my education really by getting a job and working with a small computer company, and there's a balance. My own son is just beginning. My oldest child is beginning college this year, so I think about these things a lot. And you can't honestly recommend that people drop out of school and take that sort of approach. The best thing to do is to stick with a course of study, get into college, finish the college courses, learn everything you can. But there is an important twist in this, particularly for security and for those who really want to excel. And there's a very clear difference between following instructions and finishing a class and finishing a course and getting a degree, and having an actual passion. Security is, as I say, it's not the same as bolting together plates of steel. It's not the same as writing an application to perform a function. It's a competition between people who are exercising their will. And the people looking to break systems are highly motivated. So if as a security expert, all you're going to do is do your job, you're probably not going to be as successful as you could if you really care.
I understand that from your I understand from you that the security is considered, it is more patient than it is like a following courses, instructions you have to follow it, and
yes,
right?
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Okay. After graduating from your college, which university you after completing your secondary school or metric? In some countries, it is called metrics. So after completing that, you join computer science department, right?
Yeah, well, so I went to school at Greenville Technical College in South Carolina. I ended up joining a small computer company with about 50 to 100 people making systems for the retail industry, and became the technical person behind everyone else. So I would just had a very strong interest in how everything worked, and ended up supporting.
At that time,
please go ahead.
At that time, yes. At that time, while you are working in that company, what is the systems you have worked on that time? Yani, what is the things that you are working in a server client environment, Microsoft product, or which types of products you are working at that time?
Sure, that is an interesting point in time. So we were a data general shop, data general with manufacturers. So at that point we were removing and replacing old RDOS systems, and these are computers back when a 5 megabyte or a 10 megabyte disk drive was the size of a washing machine, was 5 feet high and 4 feet square. We were replacing those with AOS, data general AOS microcomputers, objects that were the size of a large suitcase and running multiple systems. And right at that time, the Intel processors, the 386 was the fast Intel processor, and we started making systems with desktop PC chassis that the size and shape that are familiar and common today, with an Intel 386 processor in it, and the Xenix operating system, which was the Santa Cruz operations version of Unix. So as that transition when we're going from the old mainframes to mini computers, and microcomputers and Unix were just starting to become popular.
Okay, means at that time I understand that there is no courses and certifications. I mean there is no certification like now. There is no something called CCIE security or something called CCIE routing and switching. It is very old days, right?
Indeed, yes.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Blask, the main point for I found that there is so much demanded on the security courses and um, security people these days. For example, before we can, yani, here in the Middle East, I think in Europe also the same, or maybe different situation. Uh, there are so much demanding on the persons who have CCI security. They are, from your point of view, why there are so much demanded on security persons, especially in this period? Before we heard there are so much demand on the CCIE routing and switching. There are so much demanding on the another things. But these days, especially, there are so much demanded on there are so many opportunities for those people who are so much understanding the security courses.
Well, it's an evolutionary path. So back in the late 70s and into, in 1979, a good friend of mine, Dr. Fred Cohen, in his PhD thesis, postulated the future existence of computer viruses. So, in 1980, there weren't viruses. So, and when I first got onto the internet in the late 80s, there were no pictures. There was no World Wide Web. This was quite often batch emails, text exchange sort of system that just didn't have the resources necessary to support a lot of what we look at as computer attacks now. It was in 1989 that the Morris worm first propagated, leading to the creation of the first national CERT of the Computer Emergency Response Team at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh in the United States. So, in that relatively short time, in the scope of all this, when I was first working in computers, the first computer virus, the first computer worm, sort of hit the space, and when we look at the time and effort it takes to build a global internet, 5 years and 10 years and even 20 years aren't enormous periods of time. So most effort has been put on actually physically running the cables and the fiber and so forth, and configuring, acquiring and configuring and designing the networks, putting in routers, putting in switches. Security has been important through most of this period, since the early 1990s and the firewall market and so forth. But you look at, one way to look at it, I suppose, is the size of the firewall market, and you can measure it in the number of units sold or dollars or whatnot. But with Borderware, the early 90s, we sold a few $1 million worth of firewalls, products, and we were a leading vendor. With Trusted Information Systems, which was in 1998 was sold. The previous year we had done $45 million worth of business, which was enormous, which was huge. At Cisco, the late 90s, early 2000s, we started doing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business. And the prices, at the same time of these devices are getting smaller and smaller. So the numbers of devices going out. First it was individual devices, and then dozens, and then hundreds, and then thousands, and then tens of thousands, and millions of firewalls. Today, every home has a firewall built into their little router. Every company has multiple firewalls. And you start thinking about how long it takes just to build and ship and tune millions and hundreds of millions of firewalls, so computer devices. It just takes years and decades. So in all these ways, it's taken this long for the environment to develop to the point where on the white hat side, from the defender side, where we have the capability to use the quantity of people, to even apply them and have jobs for them and have places where they can perform security skills. And fortunately, we have a parallel evolution, not particularly ahead of the white hats, but the black hats, people who are developing attacks and attacking networks, it's taken them a long time to develop their sophistication to the same level. So it's really just, we're following a curve that's inevitable. It's obvious. Anyone academically looking back can see that from 1990 to 2000 to 2010, there'd be this both an increase in attacks and threats and this increase in opportunities to work in security to counter those.
Okay. Mr. Blask, I saw that from my point of view that routing and switching is the basic, or you can say the infrastructure for doing any network. Then after building the network, it comes the security side, that I have to secure my network. Then the third point, we are facing today that so many companies are changing from the previous PSTN network to the VoIP network. So what is your point of view regarding voice in future? How you read that voice in future? It will be so much popular and so much important?
Oh, absolutely. The convergence is a term that is perhaps overused, but it's absolutely true. Whether we're looking at the devices, there used to be telephones, and separately there would be computers and cameras and so forth. And obviously with smartphones, we see that they're all becoming the same device. Similarly with networks. In my experience from the late 80s and early 90s, there were telephone networks, there were dedicated networks for corporate communications, and there were computer networks, and these are very different things. Today they're very much the same thing. Whether we're looking anywhere in the world, in the Middle East, in Central America, you may have a legacy system. So we've been working, and I've been working in various contexts with countries in the Middle East, with Yemen, as an emerging nation, to help them develop their national capabilities for security, and looking at the infrastructure they need to build out. Similar cases you get in North Africa and Central America, where there are legacy systems. It's like looking at a point in time. Sort of what we're talking about here. You can look back in the 80s and 90s and see systems that are still deployed that are traditional old, public switch telephone networks, but they're being replaced with IP networks. So every modern national telephone system is now an IP network. It's all telephony is VoIP. And where it isn't, it just hasn't been changed yet. So yes, the telephone systems are gone, and anywhere that there still exists, they're just fossils. It's all VoIP in the future.
Okay, Mr. Blask, from your point of view regarding security, if you are talking regarding how to secure data, is it differently how to secure voice, because voice is a real-time application? Is there any difference, or there is some security consideration or some security issues that you have to take it in your mind, or any security person take it in his mind that he should do because it is voice?
I think that the short answer is yes, and the longer answer, I think, is very important for people to understand looking forward, that what we have seen as security in the past, simply putting a perimeter, putting a firewall in at the edge of a corporate network, or securing a host, or securing application software by writing the software better or defending that host better, these are modular components of what security in the future looks like. And frankly, security today looks like. And VoIP is a good example. As you say, it's real-time, it's end-to-end. But right now, you and I are speaking, halfway around the world using GoToMeeting application, which uses VoIP and various other tools, which will run over multiple ports just depending on what it needs to get its job done. And this is the nature of really everything. And all of these things add up to my current view of what security is. And this is something we're working with here in the U.S. and internationally on the critical infrastructure side, which is that we can't build perfect systems. We can't go back and fix all the problems in software, all the bugs and all the vulnerabilities as the tools are built and as they're deployed. While we do need to do that, we need to reduce the attack surface as much as possible. what we need to focus on is real-time awareness. We need to build security systems that take into account, as you've mentioned, the fact that there's a live communication between devices, and that compromising that device, that communication, is a very valid attack path. So as the defenders, we need to develop systems that allow us to be aware right now of the security of our systems, not simply count on the fact that we configured and deployed or built something correctly and then walk away and not pay attention to it.
Okay, Mr. Blask, as a security expert, today we heard about courses CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, as well as we heard about some courses like Cisco security courses, CCNB security, as well CCIE security, all these stuffs. What is the best, I mean by the best, in opportunities in future regarding which is better, CH courses or some specialized courses, like because there are so many people are talking about these things, especially in the Middle East. Some of them are talking and say CH is better than Cisco security courses. Another say no, it is different. Another say no, Microsoft courses is better. So there is so many talking about these points. So as a security expert, what is your point of view regarding this thing?
Well, if it's any consolation, the same argument not only is going on in the United States and in Europe and the West, but has been going on for many years. And the reality is that today, a lot of proposals, a lot of requests for proposal documents that are put out by organizations require, CCNA security, or they require a CISSP, the ISC squared certification. So pragmatically, particularly for younger folks who are looking to build their careers, certifications are good, period. Each certification will have some benefits. Certified ethical hacker, I personally feel very strongly that's a good foundation. Really, look at how bad people do things and think about that, as opposed to just learning an individual view of things. However, pragmatically, you want to look at, if I was counseling a student, I'd want to talk to them about what their goals are, what are they looking to achieve, what research they've done into the markets they plan on working in, and just encourage them to get as many certifications as they realistically can. I've seen a lot of my friends and colleagues from the Middle East and from the developing world have fascinated me with the diligence they've taken, much more so than a lot of American students and European students, in just having reams of certifications. What it says to a potential employer is that you're serious, you're dedicated, you're willing to work hard, you're willing to finish things. So there's, it's very difficult to look forward and say what will be important 5 years and 10 years from now. But I think there's certain certifications like a CISSP, like a certified ethical hacker, like major Microsoft and Cisco vendor certifications that will always be valuable.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Blask, I mean, because from my point of view, and as so many persons say that implementing so many certification in security is so much hard for the persons who are studying, like a CH and CCNB security, as well as CCIE security, CISSP, so I mean, which is better, to enroll in Cisco security courses and enroll in configuring and doing the things, or to think how the hackers and attackers think?
I think it's hard, if not impossible, to really answer that empirically. I think as a professional, for learning and being a better professional, being better at your job, I think learning how the hackers think, which leads to the certified ethical hacker, However, if you don't get a job and you don't get to exercise your skills, then you're a hobbyist and not a professional. So, they're looking at what employers want, and CISSPs and the MS, the Microsoft and Cisco certifications show up on a lot of job applications. So are they the best? Kind of aside from the point. If they help you achieve your goal of getting a job and having a profession, then you can get picky about what you think is really the right thing to do or not.
Okay. From your point of view, did you, for example, CH, is it considered as a starting point, as a good starting point for studying security, or starting with Cisco CCNA security? Because some people are starting their security path by CH to think how the hackers thinking and what is the vulnerabilities things, and some of them starting with CCNA security. From your point of view, what is the best point for starting security paths?
If I had to take my personal opinion, I would say the certified ethical hacker. Looking at because it really isn't about the technology. And while with the CCNA security and so forth, you'll learn specifically how things are done. That's good to know. As we're sort of pointing out in my career, things have changed completely. The technologies used have changed dramatically, but security is security at the end of the day. How you break things, how you defend things, is its own science. Has in many ways nothing to do with the technology underneath. So personally, I think learn how to think like a hacker, learn how to break things, learn how people think about breaking things, and then whatever the technology you end up applying that to. The methodology and the way to think is always the same.
Okay. One point is that regarding the security, okay, regarding the security, and there is a test penetration. Test penetration in the Middle East, it is not so much popular. I don't know regarding Europe or United States, maybe it is so much popular, but I found that field it is. There are few persons that are enrolling themselves in test penetration. So what is the reason behind that? Is it so much difficult so that there's so many people, so that few peoples are enrolled, or what is the?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's actually that difficult, which may just be my own view of it. I know, very successful penetration testers who will say when they're giving public presentations that they didn't come at this with a great deal of expertise, and it's so my view is that we tend to be doing the wrong things at any given time, which is normal, understandable. So, but you can make a good career out of that, and you don't have to be. To get caught up in the debates of the leading experts, to have a good career and to do real good in the world. And there is a lot of penetration being done in some places. I think, I know people who in the Middle East are doing a lot of penetration testing right now. So there's probably something of a vacuum that if you're a student in that region and you choose to study up on penetration testing, that might be a very good career move. On the flip side, the complaint I have about penetration testing in any environment, but again, particularly in critical infrastructure, is it's relatively easy to go into an oil facility or electric facility and walk around and come up with a huge list of vulnerabilities and say, we need to work on these, and then go and fix those, and make a lot of money and do very well. Does that necessarily lead to a secure facility? I'm not so sure. I think it's much more useful to step all the way back, look at, who the people running it are, what capabilities they have, how they make decisions, and work from the outside in. And then you may find that the most vulnerable issues are human processes. That of the 12 worst technical vulnerabilities, there's 3 of them that will actually make the place more secure by working on.
Mr. Blask, regarding the IP version 6, so many persons say that IP version 6 gives the benefits as well as it has own bad things regarding the security. So from your point of view, is this how you will read that regarding the IP version 6 and it is security?
So I think the safest path is to accept that, that there's been thought, and a great deal of thought, into how to improve various parts of any next version of technology. And IPv6 is an enormous change over IPv4. And there are aspects of security that are certainly better there. However, history is not full of new versions of anything that have lived up to their most extreme hype. We can think of the classic example of the ship Titanic, which was claimed to be unsinkable and impervious to all previous faults and immediately sank. And we see the same thing in security all the time. We see security organizations who have declared how good they are immediately hacked by Anonymous, for example, and compromised. So for an academic purpose, for an applied purpose, for people working in the field, I would suggest you look at IPv6 seriously for the benefits that it has. I mean, the address-based need was really the first driving force, and we will all go down the IPv6 path, no doubt. Take what benefits from a security perspective you can get out of it, but don't change your methodology. Still put in all the monitoring, visibility, control mechanisms. Work on securing your code, and at the the one way to look at it is if you're just getting into security now and you think IPv6 is going to eliminate the need for security people at some point in the future, don't worry about it. There will be need for security people for as long as any of us are alive.
Yes, you are right. Because some people or some engineers say the IP version 6 is coming with its own security, IPsec and these things, and some engineers say no, IP version 6 open very huge door to break the security because of its long paths.
And it's probably both true.
Yes. Mr. Plask, now if you are a student, what is your advice to persons that want to involve themselves and they want to be security experts? What is your advice from which books they have to study, which certification they have to get, which the methods they have to utilize? I mean, if any person wants to be a security expert, so what is the best way, or how he will do that? And
sure, and we've touched on some of these things. There are some specific certifications I think that are worth going after. I think CISSP, a Certified Ethical Hacker, Cisco and Microsoft certifications are all just generally worth getting. But I think the best advice is to look at who you are and understand that in your career path in 10 years and 20 years, if you're just a student now, you'll be getting to various stages in your career, you want to be sustainable, and that when there's a strong demand for something, you'll tend to have a strong response. So if you are the kind of person who is extremely creative, who has a short attention span, you're always looking for something new, or if you're the kind of person who's very diligent and very dedicated, and has to have all of your desk in your room is perfectly organized, and you like to work on things longer term, there's a different career path. And as opposed to necessarily just thinking that I want to be a security expert, you might want to think more closely into that. If you want to be a developer, for example, if you're a developer with an extremely strong security expertise, that separates you from your pack. It separates you from people you're competing with for a higher career position. So there's a lot of different specialties within security. Security itself is not a specialty anymore. It's a field with specialties inside it. My focus being so much on industrial control systems, on critical infrastructure these days, I think this is an enormous growth area. I think it's an area where you can have a general specialty that will take you a long way. Whereas in IT security, you really want to focus in if you're in college right now. So for critical infrastructure, if you want to, if you have a strong interest, if you're a very creative person, if you like security and you're working with understanding the basic concepts, and you want to look at the physical systems, the Internet of Things that's being built out there, understand the basic differences between an industrial control system network and an IT network. I think graduating next year, graduating in 2 years and 3 years and 4 years from college with that sort of expertise really separates you from everybody else in a field where, unlike in IT, where IT is fairly well developed everywhere in the world today, certainly compared to when I first saw it 20 years ago. In the industrial space, there are very few individuals who have the skills to understand both security as well as the special needs of an oil field operation, of an electrical system operation. And just to say exactly what those are at the highest level is you have restrictions. At an IT network, you can be dynamic, you can do crazy things, insert processes to make things more secure. In industrial systems, you usually can't. You have to be much more considered. You can't bring systems offline. You have availability that has to be continuous availability. It's just not like IT. And you have advantages in industrial systems where, because of the more controlled environment, you can do some things you can't do in IT, where it's just too dynamic. So specialization, recognize your own skills and look to build those. If you are a very pedantic, very organized person, don't try to be the rock star crazy hacker. That's not your path. And if you're the rock star crazy hacker kind of person, learn as much diligence as possible, but play to your own strengths.
Okay. Mr. Blask, regarding security point, is there any difference regarding the security of ISP, especially ISP companies, and the security of an enterprise companies or campus companies?
Oh, absolutely. They're very different creatures. And an ISP has an enterprise behind it. So at that level, if you are looking at the corporate network for a telephone carrier or an internet service provider, that's really the same as enterprise security anywhere else. But an ISP's main business is to run a network that is carrying throughput from enterprises and other endpoints. So it is a different way of looking at things. I mean, it is again converging. Both the technologies and the processes involved are much more similar today than they were 20 years ago. But there is telephony, for want of a better word. The needs. Let me look at it this way. So 20 years ago in security, we were looking only at enterprises, and for many years we only looked at enterprises. The year 2000, that period, late 90s, early 2000s, those of us, at the period when I was working for Cisco Systems, Cisco was trying to get into the service provider space and realizing that even though at that point we're the largest market capitalization company in the entire world, we had huge financial resources, we had a great deal of experience, working with service providers was a whole new world. The level of some of the technical differences and some of the technologies used, but really more the business models and the availability and reliability needs were so much higher than enterprises that it changed the model entirely. I reference this all the time in my current focus on critical infrastructure because similarly, even though the IT people have understood the service provider world much better than we did 10 years ago, we still don't really understand the critical infrastructure, where there is no Sunday, there is no Saturday night, there is no downtime. The systems in service provider space, are much more critical in a lot of ways than they are in the enterprise space. Critical infrastructure is even more so. you bring down a power grid, you bring down a water system, you poison water that people are drinking, that has a much higher level of responsibility and diligence than whether or not their phone calls get through.
Okay, Mr. Blask. What is the points also? Last word to the persons who will be specialized in security, and last point to the persons who are in IT field. What is the best advice from your side?
I think passion counts for more than we think sometimes, and particularly in certain fields. There's some things in any job, in any course of study. There are those who take their work very seriously, and there are those who are just doing what they have to do. Both can find jobs, both can find happiness, but the better jobs, the better pay, by some measures, the better lives go to those who work very, very hard. And security, I've always thought, is even more so an issue like this. Again, you have to remember that you're not just doing a number of tasks when you're doing security work. You're competing, and you're competing against people that very much want to take the money behind the systems you're protecting. They want to cause harm to the people behind the systems you're protecting. And they can have criminal motivations, they can have ideological motivations, they can have political motivations that are extremely strong. They're not likely to take weekends off. They're not likely to go on vacation and stop doing what they're doing. They're not likely to give up because they found something difficult. They will do everything they can. So, security is a field where you can't just go through the motions. You can't just do the work you were told to do, get your certifications, show up on Monday morning. You have to take it very seriously. If you do, I think it can be incredibly rewarding. You're doing good work, you're doing ethically useful work, you're making the world safer and better for people who deserve the protection, for your mothers, your fathers, your grandfathers, the innocent people on the street who are just trying to get to their life. So my best advice is to understand that while the world may be cynical around you, insecurity is somewhere where you can take the ethical high road and feel very good and be very proud of the work you do.
Okay, right. Mr. Blask, last point is regarding the is there any plan for example, the internet? The internet now is running, and it is running very finely. If there is any plan, for example, if there is some crashes in the internet that will disconnect all of the persons, I mean, there is line B for the internet.
Line B for the internet. I think that the internet is sort of intrinsically that. It's always been built around the idea that any one part could go away. There's the internet too, and there's other backbones. In the United States, obviously, my country, in the government space and other spaces, has other networks. Everything's connected to everything else. But there are line Bs, for a lot of individual organizations. At a tactical level, when you get down inside, individual carriers and service providers and so forth, I think that the short answer is yes. But I think our job as the engineers and architects of all this is to make sure that our mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers never have to know that their connections will always work, even if line A has gone down. Line B will just take over.
You are right. Thank you, Mr. Chris Blask. In this interview, Mr. Chris Blask, an expert security manufacturer or an expert security person in the expert systems. Thank you very much, Mr. Chris Blask, and nice to meet you in this interviewer. I hope we will get the most benefits from this interview, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Best wishes to you and to everyone listening. Good luck with your careers, and nice to meet you, and hope I helped in some small way.